Hello and welcome back to the Commonplace. My name is Autumn Kern. Please pay no mind to the shelves behind me. If you're used to seeing all of the books nicely stacked, you will see that there are holes, large gaping holes on the shelves right now. But that is because I am still reorganizing our books after getting some new bookshelves. And I just started this tour of our library. I'll link the first one up above for you so you can start following along. And I'm just moving through the library based on what I want to talk about. But that means that in real time, I'm still reorganizing different parts of the library. And you know, life is usually in process, not perfectly finished. And so that's where we are with the shelves. But I hope that will not be a distraction to you today, because we're actually gonna talk about books again, but we're gonna talk about books and kids in the home. Because when I showed my last video, which did show some treasure books, like some early edition Masons or my early editions of the American Narnias, which actually include different names for characters. In the 90s, they made everything the same. So it's fun to talk about, but that's in my other video. I won't talk about it again, even though it's a really fun fact. But I had these old, beautiful books. I would say that I sometimes am just a book buyer. Like I go hunting, I find a good deal, I'm wanting a book, I order it through Amazon, like these things happen too. But I'm also a bit of a book collector. So there are certain books that are very special to me, or certain authors that are very special to me. And so I will hunt down particular editions. I will look for certain printings. I want certain bindings. And that's where the collector side of me comes in. And I think when people saw those books, they thought, you have little kids in your house. How do they not destroy your books? And so between Common House and then actually a couple YouTube comments, people asked questions, and I thought, why don't I just make a video with some seemingly common sense tips for teaching book handling in the home, but also maybe not common sense, like maybe it feels like you don't even know where to start. So I just have a couple of tips today, and hopefully they'll be helpful to you. They seem to be what works in our home. And so the first one is to not be a fussy mother. I remember, well, I would say not be a fussy mother about a lot of things actually, but when it came to books, and I had, you know, my first kiddo, my second kiddo, they were really close together, about 18, 19 months apart. And I just had these little toddlers crawling or climbing up the shelves, and I thought, I don't want to ruin any seeds of love of reading by being overly fussy about my books. Being like, don't touch that. No, don't touch it that way. No, don't hold it that way. No, don't leave that there. You can quickly get into the don't and no mentality when you have books around the house. And I knew that for a child to love reading and to want to read, they needed to be able to feel comfortable trying to read, or at least look at the pictures in a book when they're really little. So that is the first step, is to make sure that you are hospitable around your home library. The library is there to serve the people do not serve the library. And so that means you need to be smart about certain things, like would I leave my early editions of Mason or my very favorite copy of Little Men down on the lowest shelf where a toddler or, you know, a visiting baby who comes over could get to it? No, of course not. I'm going to keep those up high, and I might even put them behind glass doors to protect them. But most books in your library should be able to live out and about, and you not feel overly protective of them. So if you do have like a handful of books, or maybe a couple shelves of books that are really special, maybe they're family heirlooms, maybe you spend a lot of money and they're hard to find, those are all valid reasons to protect your books. But just put them where kids can't find them or reach them until the child has reached an age where they understand and they handle the books well. Whew, I needed to breathe a little bit of air there. Actually, in my last video, a lot of people told me to remember to breathe or to slow down my speaking. I promise you, YouTube, I do try to slow down my natural talking speed when I record, but I am a fast talker. I'm sorry, you can slow me down. A lot of people commented that they do that to my videos. I'm sorry, but hopefully that's a helpful tip if I do speak too quickly for you. So don't be fussy is the first thing. The second thing is to give children responsibility and ownership as you are able. So in one category, the way this has looked is that I will have my children help care for the books with me. Now, all my kids don't get to do the same jobs with me because they have various ages, capabilities, and even interest in taking care of the books, but I try to meet them where they are and let them be a part of the library in our home and not just be like library card holders, if that makes sense. So this might be dusting the shelves, reorganizing the books. If you keep a library catalog, which we do, making sure that it's updated when new books come into the house, or it's updated when you donate books or give books away, or even if they're older, having them help with book binding, rebinding if you need to fix something, having them replace book covers if you keep those clear dust jackets on your books because maybe they don't have the dust jacket anymore. Different things like that help a child learn the skills to take care of a library. And oftentimes when a kid has a skill, they feel the natural urge to care for something because they know how to do it. Now, the other part of responsibility and ownership is giving them their own areas of books. So this could start as a basket on the floor where you put all their board books or their picture books. I I did that a lot when my kids were little, or I used the lowest level of one of our shelves and there was a whole section, they were, their books. And when they're really little, I found that most of the time my kids don't start reaching for the upper shelves because those books don't have pictures in them. And so when they're very little, they usually do stay where they know their shelf is. But you start giving them little areas, like this is your shelf. So you can come get your books, but when you're done, you need to go and put them back, and they need to be orderly. They need to go in this way so you can see the spine, and you teach them how to care for their books on a shelf in the main book space, main family space, wherever it is. Then as they age, you may move a bookshelf into their room. We have a very short, small bookshelf in my children's room. They share a room, they call it the nursery, like Peter Pan, and the shelf is probably as tall as my 4-year-old, and it's his shelf to take care of. It includes, yes, a lot of our board books, but not just board books. There are old, beautiful copies of books on that shelf. There are old copies of the Peter Rabbit series. There are old, beautiful copies of things like Barbara Cooney picture books, things that we love, where they have the potential to be mistreated. But again, back to that, don't be fussy. I'm not overly worried about them because they are somewhat replaceable. I'm not advocating for your kids just destroy things and you just buy them new things, obviously, but if they were to be ruined, it would not be the same thing as if they ruined my copy of Home Education, right? Like, it's gonna be a little bit different. So the shelf in the nursery is about the height of my 4-year-old, and it's his job to take care of this shelf. Like when all the kids come and pull the books out before bedtime, or when they're in their beds for a little bit of quiet time before they go to sleep, it's his job to restock them in the morning. And the shelves are different heights, so he has to pay attention and learn that taller books must go on this shelf, shorter books can go on this shelf. It's easiest if I stack them upright rather than try to put them sideways, because he does know that all the books in their room can fit on this shelf. So if he's not able to get them back on, it's probably because he's putting them on in like a lazy fashion and he needs to reorder the books. Then my older children have a very large like vintage cabinet with glass doors that is in our hallway that holds the majority of their library. Obviously you could probably see some kid books behind me. It's not their whole library, but the majority of it, again, ranging from like there's one really beautiful Narnia pop-up book we have that's kind of a treasure book. It's not that I couldn't find it on eBay again, but it is something that was given to one child specifically for a holiday. I have for a long time only let them look at it when I'm around so that no one tears apart the pop-up parts, but now that they're older and this child can maintain their own book, it's up on that shelf. And then of course there are old copies of like Anne of Green Gables or Betsy Tacy series, things like that, like copies that you would see and be like, that looks like a beautiful book, a beautiful old one. And then there are, of course, all the new picture books. We buy them or people give them. And those are all upstairs, and it's their job to take care of that shelf. So kids will leave piles of books in my house all over the place. Again, don't be fussy about where they land, but teach them that the books must be cared for. So they have to go back on the shelf so that we don't step on them. We don't muddy up the pages because we walked across with our boot on, whatever it could be. And you're able to slowly tap them in so that they are able to care for the books and appreciate the books really well. And then as they really age, I now have my oldest actually helps care for our like nice books. Like I will let her dust and clean the glass and everything around the really nice books because she knows how to gently take them down, stack them the right way, clean the shelves, reorganize them, keeping them in order. And I don't do order for my kids' shelves. That's something that's actually gonna be quite hard to film, the kid books, because they are free to put them back however they want, right? Barring the size of the shelf and the size of the book, they do not have to be in any order, which means often I don't know where their books are. We have to go hunt for them if they're looking for a specific book. But that's part of the fun of being the home librarian too. Now, you're probably wondering, has a current child ever ruined a very nice old book? Yes, it has happened. Once. Other books have been, they've fallen apart, the spine has been ripped, the pages have been ripped out, usually by accident, but once a current child walked by and just pulled on the slightest tab of a spine that was slowly peeling and ripped down it. It's one of my Waverly novels, which you will see in another video, which I'd been very excited about this set. There are 30 in the set and I only have 25 of them, but I found them at a library sale, and this was probably 5 or 6 years ago. I'm trying to think how old my oldest is. Probably 5 years ago. It was at a library sale. It was my first big one that I went to, and I found this beautiful like edition of the Waverly novels, which Charlotte Mason read on repeat. These were sort of like her Narnias, I think. And I could not believe I found them. I knew that they were Mason's favorite type of books to read in the evening, or favorite books rather to read in the evening, and the whole set of 25 was maybe like $16, $17. And I've never been able to find 26 through 30, but when you see them, if you have them and you want to sell them to me, shoot me an email because I will talk to you about it. But a child ripped one of those. They just went by and I watched them just pull it. And a very stern, like, you may not treat a book that way, did handle that. But I will say that my kids are pretty much dangerous with every other part of my house, but not the library. And that leads into my next point, which is modeling the good behavior in the library. Because Colonel children will run wild around this house. They will carve their names into furniture, they will rollerblade up and down the hardwoods, they will do anything. They've actually torn a rip in the back of my couch with a bicycle they were riding around in the house. So like it's fair game pretty much anywhere else, but the books, I think they have this certain respect for because they watch how I treat the books. This has been their whole atmosphere, their whole life. And so if you are not modeling good book behavior, maybe you leave your books on the side tables in huge stacks, maybe you put wet cups on top of them like coasters, maybe you dog ear all of your pages, maybe you bend the book when you're reading a paperback. Like these are just things to consider that your children are watching and maybe learning as book behavior. So while I definitely dog ear all of my paperback books, I don't want the kids learning to dog ear because they do it in every book. And my boys are just too young to remember like, oh, we don't do this in a nice book, we use a bookmark. So I'm just teaching them bookmark behavior now. I bought some more bookmarks, we just bookmark everything. Another thing is I don't often leave books out in places anymore. I used to just stack them on the side table, stack them next to my bed, stack them on the floor, just kind of making book stacks wherever I might want to read a book. And I'm trying to learn the habit myself of returning the book to its proper place on the shelf and then going to get it when I want to read it. Now, if you are forming the habit of reading and you've learned to kind of put books everywhere so there's always a book at hand and you don't reach for your phone, I think there's a time and place for learning those other habits like reading more. And so it's okay, it's fine, you don't have to put them back on the shelf. But it is something I want my kids to be practicing, which means usually I have to be practicing it. Otherwise, it sort of falls on deaf ears if they watch me doing the opposite of what I say, right? And I do think book attitudes in some respect are caught, not taught. And so this is where like I love books. I take my kids on my library sales. I take them on my book hunting sales. And so they are very used to like adding books to the library, caring for them as part of our family culture. It's something we value. We put our time into it in order to go find them. We put our money into it in order to buy them. We put a lot of time in it to care for it, right? Whenever you bring something into your house, you then have to spend the time to care for it. And so they just know that this is an important thing we do as Kerns. And I think that's why I haven't had a crazy amount of trouble with learning how to care for the books then. And so those are just a couple ideas of ways that you can help your kids learn how to handle old books or just books in general in your home really well. I do think it's very much the atmosphere and then the habit of watching you maybe collecting these, working on these things together, and then launching them into their own bookshelves or their literal shelf on a bookshelf or the whole bookshelf that they're able to take care of. Oh, the last little bookshelf that we have is that in my kids' bunks, my husband built little shelves for them. And so they do put their special books that have been given only to them, like special books that I knew they loved this story, or it was a gift for like finishing the school year or something like that. And they keep those separate from the general family library. I've actually talked about that in my Christmas video last year. We celebrate the 12 days of Christmastide by doing book gifts every day of those 12 days. And so some are given to the family if everyone will have an interest, or we don't have that copy of a book, and they go on the general shelves. And then some are given specifically to a child if it's a special book that means a lot to them that we've read as a family, or maybe we read just, with mom or dad. And then if it's a special interest they have, and they do typically keep those on their personal shelves. So we have kind of a hierarchy to books, but everyone knows that books are special and we should care for them. And I think that has probably helped the most. So I hope those help. Please come back for the rest of the library bookshelf tour. I'm sure it will take me a very long time to get through the whole thing, but I'm enjoying talking about my books, and it was so well received and so enjoyable to read your comments about how much you enjoy hearing about old books or books in general, and sharing some of the fun finds that you've had in your home. I really like hearing about what other people find as well. So I'll be back very soon. I think our next cabinet is going to be my favorite authors, or I think I said I would do that one next, but I also just reorganized the playwrights, poets, philosophers, and historians. I almost want to say pistorians just so it continues with the alliteration, but that's a fun cabinet because usually I think those 4 types of books are all talking about similar things from different ways, and they read really well together. So I will be back soon with more books. That's basically the point. The home librarian will be back to talk to the other home librarians. I'll see you soon.